تموم فکر و ذکرم پیش چشماته منو چجوری عاشق خودت کردی همین که با تو از در میذاری بیرون پی بغونم که زود برگردی تو میری و منم چشمامو میبندم نمیذارم رو چی غیر تو باشه میخوام که آخرین تصویر تو ذهنم تا وقتی تو میای عکس خودت باشه عشق من آرومم حالا که دستای تو توی دستامه عشق من قلب تو تمام چیزی که از دنیا میخوامه عشق من بعد از این هرچی بشه کنارت میمونم بازم عشق من تو دنیا من هیچ کسی رو اینجوری نمیخواستم
Kia ora everyone, you're listening to Voice of Our Heart on frequency 106.1 FM from Wellington, New Zealand. This show is sponsored by Host International New Zealand, also is broadcasted on Wellington Access Radio. Okay, joining me today, I have my co-hosts Kodrian, Michael, and Nargis. So guys, how's your week been so far? I know Michael, you got a job you want to talk about.
Tell us your experience.
I don't really want to talk about it all, but it's a pretty good job, and it's in government, and from someone who just came out of university, it's pretty sweet pay.
That's great.
And that's what we all live for, really, isn't it? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
as much as we got our own values, a big fat paycheck is what we need to pay the bills. How's your week?
We are glad for you.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it was quite weak for me and not much, and it was very warm week. Did you feel it? I can see you feel the warm week.
Yeah, no, I thought it
And
was...
from both sides, you get the job. You're so exciting in the one.
See, at my new job, we've got like air conditioning, so now I feel like warm, cool, refreshed.
And how was your week, Beth?
My
And-
week. I was just thinking about what I did this week.
Everything's
really
become such a blur because uni's coming closer.
I think like during the break, you don't know like where the week starts and where the week ends.
How far away is uni?
2 weeks, literally.
2 weeks. Wow. Cool. Wow.
Yeah, the break went by so fast.
I don't know. It's been a long time. It's been 4
It's
months.
been it went fast but also slow. But yeah.
Yeah,
It's
cool.
exciting. And
And you guys know which papers you're going to be doing this year? You've all chosen your papers and you're like looking
Yeah, I
forward.
realized I have 2 back-to-back 2-hour classes. So 4 hours sitting in the lecture room. I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm a bit concerned, but we'll deal with that later.
Yeah. Well, I've just had to sit in front of a computer screen for 8 hours,
Oh my god.
except for, lunch break. So I would love to send you my sympathies, but it's all been filled up right now.
Don't invalidate my experiences, Michael.
Yeah, your experiences are awesome and they're challenging, so good luck with that.
Thank you.
okay. Yes, great, guys. So what are we talking about today? Topic. I think we are talking about the coronavirus outbreak, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to hear your perspectives and what do you think and how do you see the issues and especially latest things that's very obvious.
Yeah, well, there was at question time, what is it, today? Is today Tuesday? Yeah, at question time today, the Minister of Health was asked about the name forgetting the name.
Self-care.
Self-care, but you can choose to incubate yourself. So if you
Self-incubation? What?
Yeah, incubation is the wrong word. As someone who's given you the news, dear
Yeah.
listeners, I have failed you. But yeah,
So, I mean, you stay in home for self-protection, something.
yeah, you just let the government know that
Hibernation?
that you've come from China recently, and so it's the government is assumably helps you to be quarantined. So you can be quarantined the right way, but like there's a bit of independence there as well, so you're not feeling like you've been, thrown into some sort of prison.
I don't know, just like with a lot of outbreaks that happen around the world, this is just encouraging a lot of xenophobic and racist sentiments. It's not, I don't even feel like it's about the health scare anymore or the actual, issue. It's become about the people. And it just reminds me of, I think, was it like 2014 with the Ebola virus, where people were felt comfortable just being racist towards people who have come from Africa.
Mm.
And I feel like the same thing is happening for people who've come from Asia. And I understand that there has to be, certain protocols and actions taken to contain the issue, but I think there's a different way about it than what the media is doing.
I think you were mentioning about the self-isolation, right? Something like that.
Isolation.
Yeah. Isolation, that was the word.
Self-isolation. Someone's got access to Google.
Yeah, we got it then. Yeah, I think so. I want to ask a question, like, how serious is this virus? What do you think? Is it like a previous virus that every year new things come up, or
Are you suggesting
this is something different?
Are you suggesting that it's like a government conspiracy or something?
No, it's just a question like, how do you see it as a people, as a person, and what's your reaction now? Are you influenced by the media, and are you influenced
I think it's like more driven by the media, I feel like, because like I remember with the Ebola virus, it actually like has been around for a while before it became like a whole thing in the media, or until like I think like a white person went and got it or something, and then it became like a whole thing. But it's actually existed and like it's been a thing. And so I think it's like now when like a virus occurs or whatever, the media makes it like something totally like big, and it's like it has a lot of like ignorance to do with it as well, like with actual getting the facts right and what the symptoms are or whatever. It's just an excuse to just be like ignorant and just like racist. Like, yeah, that's what I feel.
It's interesting to think about whether the media is acting consciously or unconsciously about these things.
It's never acting consciously.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like a lot of people who I talk to who are conspiracy theorists who are always like, the media's out to get you, and someone's controlling the media to influence people's, behaviors. I think to myself that it's a very complex situation, and there are many things going on. I don't think anyone's that smart. And if there are, then they're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
But since it's so complex and there's so many things going on. But you're right, like the mainstream media is governed by the West, and the West generally are white people, and so when white people get injured,
It's a bigger deal.
it's a bigger deal because those other white people can relate, and so they're more likely to watch the news, I guess. Whereas if someone from a different cultural background gets it, especially if you've grown up with like when I was growing up, when you were watching the news, there were always wars on the news, and so I guess it's kind of been normalized a bit.
Yeah.
So just getting back about that self-isolation thing, do you know of any examples that has been recently occurred?
There was a case of a Filipino kid being sent home from school after I think having visited the Philippines. And wait, let's go back.
Is that in New Zealand?
History of New Zealand. Yeah. Wait, let me just get the thing.
Oh, that was in New Zealand.
Yeah, it was in New Zealand. A Filipino mother decried the move in New Zealand school amid the coronavirus scare to send home from her children after learning they came from a trip to the Philippines. So after the school found out that they had visited their home country, they sent the kids home.
Yeah. Well, that's quite good because New Zealand is taking quite a cautionary approach, more so than some other countries who do major trading with China. So I think there is a lot to say about what is about this approach, because people generally do have the interests of the community at heart. And
When they send kids home from school?
Yeah, or just when they
But don't you think it's just because the kid looked Asian? It's because that's why she was sent home.
No, I think no. It's just because of these countries they've been affected, and
They've only had 3 cases
So
in the
three-
whole country.
yeah.
And
so
the
just
only province that should be like quarantined in China should be
but
the
who
Hubei.
who guarantee
province.
that? Because it's all I think is there's nothing in that because it's just a procedure to protections if you come from these countries. Actually, it should be much better from the family to not send their kids. The first action should come from the families to not send their kids to the school before it's come from the government or the school tell them something like that. So anyone who is visiting these countries, I think it's first action. Even if I have been to if I was visiting them, I will definitely actually I come to some place that I will not affect my family for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then I will get back to my family and my work and things like that. So I'm not sure about if it was only because it's Asian, but I'm pretty much sure it was just because it come in the country that's been identified some cases there. But here also will be maybe the question just about what about people who are coming from Australia, because even there is 11 cases in Australia. But does that we can say that Australia have controlled these cases? But we can see that each time it's getting more and more cases. I think it's 11, 12 now.
Well, there's a ship, isn't there, a cruise ship that's been
Yeah.
docked in Japan that's got 11
yeah.
New Zealanders in it, and that's in quarantine at the moment.
Mm.
And so now the New Zealand government has to figure out what to do with those New Zealanders. Should we take them out of their quarantine because they're New Zealanders, or should we leave them in that quarantine zone?
I think they
I
are
feel like
our citizen. We need to bring them back. I think so. In any way, we need to bring them back and put them in a place. Just
But
take
they're,
the normal.
but they're already
procedures.
been quarantined. So, like, to take them out of the quarantine places a bigger risk on the globe. So that's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So here's another problem. So we maybe, in this case, I think we need to have something international collaboration together. Like such a cases, like not everyone taking their citizen home. Why not to collaborate and put some fund stuff for this issue someplace? Everyone get the treatment and to make sure 100%, because now they arrived in Japan and now it's in that area and that cruise area. Let's support that all the countries who have citizens in there, instead of everyone being that's my citizen. And then here I think we are making more dangerous for all the other countries. That's my
I
opinion.
think it's all about like checking your motives, like why are we really like taking these actions, or why are we really like isolating certain people? Does it come from like racism or like stigma? I think that's at the end of the day what's really important is that people don't feel isolated and they don't feel discriminated against, that everyone has a fair kind of like treatment
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So I think that's like what the question comes to, like why the government taking this action and not doing this, and yeah.
I think maybe you were trying to say that there is no justification for racism, right? There is no any way that you justify it's okay, the racism. Racism is not okay.
I mean,
Discrimination is not okay. So I was seeing in the media, and if you see in social media, and Facebook especially, a lot of people commenting about China people, about people
like
come
all
there,
over
so-
social media, there are jokes and like memes of like interacting with
Yeah.
like Chinese people, and even the Race Relations Commissioner Ming Foon, he posted about this and had talked with the Project NZ about it, because there had been increased cases of xenophobic and xenophobic treatments towards Asian people. And that's a
Yeah.
reminder here that, this is about the virus. Isn't like the people didn't create this virus,
So this is not acceptable at all, and we need to stand against these actions, because we have, like Michael, we were talk about, we had this measles issues, right, in New Zealand. Measles, what they call that disease?
Oh yeah, measles. Yeah.
Measles. And look at that. Some of people who travel to Samoa and then spread the diseases, right? So the same case, you have to put your feet on this. situation. We don't need to judge the Chinese people and things. It's not their fault. And like I said at the beginning, there is no justification for any type of discrimination or racism.
This next point might be a little controversial. I think it's still within my means of freedom to speech, but the people who made the measles outbreak, they were anti-vaxxers, so they had a choice not to vaccinate their kids. Whereas these people from China...
Yeah, this is different.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. You're saying that it's the same, but I'm saying it's different because the measles, we chose... Well, not me, but New Zealanders chose to let their kids not be vaccinated, whereas in China, it was a disease that
That's
was...
a whole other conversation. If you're going to choose not to get your kids vaccinated, I don't want them around my kids. Don't put them... There should be, I don't know, some sort of solution for that because... Nobody's kids should have to deal with, any kind of illness because somebody chose not to vaccinate their kids. That's within your right, I guess. But, if it's going to harm someone, there should be a way to keep that away. Yeah.
I get a bit angry about that sort of thing
Yeah,
too.
I know.
It's interesting, like some of the work that DIA is doing is around the misinformation campaign and trying to how we can mitigate against hate speech, for one, which plays into the xenophobic conversation, but also against fake news, which plays into the anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, misinformation really influenced these anti-vaxxers. I think I heard one time is because there's a risk for your child to end up autistic. So would you rather have a dead child than an autistic child?
And those are there's one thing is that children start showing signs of autism around the same time you get your vaccinations. So some people say, "Oh, my kids are showing signs of autism as I'm getting them vaccinated." Therefore, correlation, causation. Secondly, what was the second thing I was going to say? I forgot what it was.
We just keep
that one should be enough.
Yeah, that's enough. Yeah. It's actually really sad. I'm just reading here, the Canterbury police are also investigating a message sent to parents calling Asian students virus spreaders and telling them to stay home. Which again, why are these kids being tormented about something that's out of their control and out of everybody's control?
Is it that message specifically for Asian people or for everyone who visited
Calling
Asian
Asian students virus spreaders.
That's really,
so
that's
it's
not
against
acceptable,
Asian.
I think,
No.
And
whereabouts was that?
In Canterbury.
In Canterbury. Yeah. I don't want to call it seems as though, I guess all New Zealand media has got that bias, but there was the Otago Daily Times that made that insulting joke about the Samoans and the measles, and now you got Canterbury Times saying this thing. Of course, I'm sure there are Wellington and Auckland newspapers that have bias as well.
One more thing, I think here we should talk about the job of media and everyone. Talk about the ethics of the jobs of media. When something this happening, it doesn't necessarily to panic people.
Yeah.
What they mean, some people think, well, is it true? Should you say it or not? Okay, say the truth, but not that why, in 24 hours, you're just using coronavirus and coronavirus. Even now, I cannot drink a beer of Corona, man.
It's the money. I'd say it's the money that they're like, oh, we need sales for money, so we need something shocking. And fear is always more a moneymaker than excitement.
Yeah, but in these cases, they need to be more ethical. Why to deal with this? Because it's about everyone. And now we are in a world of globalization. Everything's affect everything. Like any news from that side of the world will affect us, right? So this virus, it will affect us. But we need to deal with it, how we can find a solution, help it, instead of just making panic and going through the discrimination things.
The problem with trying to bring ethical regulations on the media is that as soon as you try and do that, the media goes, freedom of speech, I don't want your regulations. and then the government's like, oh, we've got to back off because the media controls public opinion. So the government have to try and balance trying to reduce misinformation because that's a regulation and appeased the media giants,
Yeah.
which I guess we are by being a radio show. But there we go.
And here we are. Also, maybe lead me to another question. So you see, when a country having a serious issue, is it right to open another issues instead of trying to help them in that issues? For example, China. Now they are dealing with the coronavirus. We need to stand with them instead of talking about the other issues, about their government, their system, and their blah, 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 things like that. So what do you think? Is it right time to go against war against them, push them to change and things like that? Or instead we need to stand with them and how we can find a solution for this crisis of coronavirus?
The international relations students in here should probably have a couple of opinions, because we've got there's the China trade war that's been affected by this. So if you're pro-America, then it'd be a great time to stand with America and hopefully get this trade war over with, because that's really bad for a lot of countries. But on the same time, yes, we should be with China as well and being and supportive of...
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason or justification for standing against a country dealing with a crisis. You should be putting in your resources and attention to helping them and figuring out a solution, rather than spreading misinformation and panicking everybody and making them even more xenophobic, making them even more anti-immigration, anti-people of color. I don't know, it just always comes back to a deeper issue that people in the West have.
Is it just the West problem or East too? Because it's more like, I think, everyone, because if you see the social media from the other part too, they are much more racist than others. So I think we need everyone to be actions about sympathy. Instead of making panic news, why not talking about some stories? Because there's some stories from China, the people who stayed there. I think if you heard about in social media, some international students who are studying in China. So they start donation. They're starting donation, some of the couple of the bucks they have to help out the government to control this disease. This is the good story we need to hear. This is the good things we need to push for it, because as much as we create hope and collaborative and working together, we will fight anything will come, such a virus or anything else. But if you are making division and we are making panic, then definitely we are in a lose side. It's not will work for anyone, not even them and not us. So yeah, and we are coming to... Before we go to the break, any comments and thoughts about this? Any one of you guys?
I think we all just need to take responsibility when it comes to what we post, what we laugh about, what we talk about, because it actually makes an impact.
Yeah.
Even
if they're just memes, this can be hurtful to groups of people. Don't try to make it any less serious by thinking, wow, let's just end it with what Bess said. Let's just end it at that.
Yeah, I don't think there's just anything there's so many things that you can just make jokes about, that are actually funny. You don't need to. It's just ignorance, and just because it doesn't directly affect you doesn't give you the excuse to laugh about it and make memes about it, because actually you can't. We blame the media, but then we are collectively contributing to the media. So whatever we do and what we comment or what we make, the statements that we make on the media, it makes a big it makes up the big stigma and discrimination. So we all need to take responsibility, and if we see any ignorance, any discrimination on social media, we need to call it out. We need to put shame to it, because these people need to be accountable for what they put out, what they put out to the media, and your voice matters.
That's
right.
Yeah. That's right, Beth. So take your responsibility. Everyone who's listening now, we will go to the break and come back.
ይገለማመጣል ዳሌዋ ከራስዋ ሸከተፍ 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 እያለች እኔን ጥላ መርታት ምነው ቸኳቆለች ጠቀስ አርጎ ማለፍ አያዋጣም ባዘንቢሊ ሲያካፋን ጓላጠም ለካክተሽኝ ምትይ ስላት ምነው ፋሽን ነው ፋሽን ነው ፋሽን ነው ፋሽን ነው ተዋሸና ዘመኑ በሂሳብ እኔ ልትልት ካዜድ ሀሳብ ለካክተሽኝ ምትይ ብላት ምነው ፋሽን ነው ፋሽን ነው ፋሽን ነው ፋሽን ነው
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Voice of Aroha. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So our next topic, I think we're just going to be talking about the youth income plan.
What's
I saw
that?
this. Well, Michael, since you asked, we saw this on Instagram actually the other day, posted by the Young Greens. And basically, what they're calling for is more and affordable access to study, fair social services, livable wages, safe and affordable homes, and free public transport. And they have a petition online. So you should definitely go sign that if you are a student and need services to be better for you. Right off the bat, obviously, it just seems like a very kind of, general statements being made. But then they had this kind of Q&A, and they got really deep into it, into what they're trying to do. And I don't think I've ever seen anything that really truly would relate to me and actually fix a lot of things, especially in for students in your circle. Have you guys heard about it? What do you think of it?
No, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. I'm interested. Is there any Green MPs that have put their name behind that?
Yeah, me too. So I'm really interesting about. But I agree if they have free public transport for the students and much cheaper for the public. I would like that subject to be talked about more and to find some new policies around generally in public transport in Wellington.
The problem, I think, an issue that many people will have, many of the voting community will have, is where will that money come from, and where will the money be divested from into, and how will they get that money for the money that we're going to subsidise for students, because it's like a double loss.
But you mean the money that's from public transport?
Yeah, so
The yearly budget that we have. The yearly budget that we have.
That budget is kind of small compared to what the need to invest.
Didn't they put 1 billion towards mental health or something?
Yeah, and that's not much.
But let's.
But that's in my opinion. Back to the issue at hand.
Yeah.
What else can you tell us about this awesome plan?
About who was by who? Nargis, it was by Young Greens.
Wait, let me show. So the plan was created by their 2019 and 2020 Young Greens executives, members of their party, and just I think members of the community. Apparently they've been working on it since August. But yeah,
I think what I can say is, being a student myself and being around a lot of students, I think it's crazy how we live literally under the poverty line. It's really it's just the stories that I hear and the complaints about just making it through the first week, sometimes just worrying about what you're gonna eat. Just it's crazy. So I think
sometimes they barely students barely have enough money to make their rent, and that's all they can make that week.
Yeah.
So
that is so normalized, and it's just justified as the student life or student struggle or whatever. And I think just for the well-being of just young people and students, that is something that should be taken seriously. I know that in terms, it's really it may seem very unrealistic to ask for all these things, but if we really care about the well-being of the youth, I think we need to take these things in consideration. It should be a part of the conversation.
That's totally true, like what she is mentioning about the well-being, because everyone is talking about the well-being and how we can do with it what we do. But here's one of the issue of the well-being of the students, to provide them some sort of support financially, or the other support in terms of reducing the prices of public transports.
Yeah. No, I do agree that putting more money into students' pockets while they're studying will definitely increase their studying capability, which will increase New Zealand's tertiary education levels, and be long-term investment in New Zealand's the machine of New Zealand. I wonder. I imagine this will be a very popular thing to bring up, or a very strategic thing to bring up next year, assuming that Labour gets in, because it's Labour. It's what do you call it? It's election year, and it sounds like a great plan. It's just something
you can really tell that the youth and like students were actually heavily involved in leading this, because the ideas that they put forward are very unique. Obviously they want to also help the renting situation. One of the ideas that they put forward is asking the government to create a sort of rental warrant of fitness, which is a pretty cool idea to make sure everyone's living under livable homes and safe homes, and don't have to worry about multiple rent increases a year. They're also looking at increasing the student allowance and increases to who gets it, post-grad, part-time, and long-term study. They're saying here that they want to scrap the parental income threshold so students can get a full allowance regardless of their parents' income, which is really interesting, because here we have, once you're 18, it doesn't matter what your parents, you're pretty much independent. But then if you're living with your family, they take your parents' income into consideration, which is a very kind of ignorant and very ignorant thing to do, because it's assuming that your parents are helping you out or are able to help, multiple students living under their roof. What do you guys think about that? Do you think there should be a parent income threshold that relates back to the student and whether or not they do get a student allowance?
So can you repeat the question again?
So basically they want to, when you apply for Study Link now, if you live with your family, to apply for a student allowance, they want to check your parents' income
and things.
and if your parents' income aren't if it's over the threshold, you will only be eligible for either a fraction of the student allowance or none of it, depending on how over the threshold your parents' income is.
I think they should raise the threshold. But I think that if you're living with your parents and they own a $5 million house,
that's a different situation.
There are many houses on the market these days that are like $1.5 million or more. And if you do live in that sort of household, and even if you are paying rent, like I lived with my parents when I was studying, and I paid rent a bit less than what most students have, but still enough to need to take responsibility for myself.
I think they should just always be gray areas. It shouldn't be like when you put out a threshold or whatever. It shouldn't all just be just.
I think people's circumstances are different. Just as as Michael's saying, there are people living in $1 million homes. Their circumstances different. Their eligibility for a student allowance is obviously different. But let's say someone living in state housing, helping their parents out with rent. How are they? Why should their parents' income affect them getting allowance? I think that's a completely different situation, and they need to really look at everyone's individual circumstance. Otherwise, it's just extremely unfair.
And until we, I think this is not truth, but it seems as though until we digitize a lot of this administration, it's the government and Study Link don't have the resources to cover each case by case individually, and so that's why there's those standardized policies in place, so that we can be like, is he above, is he below? No, yes, done, next, because they are overworked, a lot of them. So So I think that's an issue, a problem with those grey areas. And with those grey areas, generally, it will be more unfair. That's my understanding of grey areas, is that generally it's more unfair than less.
Not sure for me because I don't have that experience of having student life here.
Yeah.
My experience was much different and it was free.
Free?
Free, yeah.
Where were
free
you?
University.
Where did you go to university?
In Iraq.
Oh, man.
So we had the university I studied was American university.
Oh,
but
dang.
it was British system. And
What did
things
you
like-
study?
In University of Kurdistan, Hawler.
Oh, okay.
So that's, if you go now check the ranking, it's one of the top universities in Iraq and region.
Yep.
So the public education actually is free there.
Right.
I mean, you study in the elementary school, high school, it's all free. Even if you get accepted, good average, so you study in a government university, it's free.
Is healthcare free?
Sorry?
Is healthcare free? Is it just the education that's free, or is there other?
The education is free, healthcare, yeah, it's free.
Maybe we should look at Iraq.
Oh.
Maybe we should go to Iraq government and be like, hey, man.
But there's some sort of difference, like healthcare is when you go, I mean, it's free, but still there is doctors who are like best or something like that. You need to go see them privately.
A what? Bus?
Doctors and private and some, if you need more, like there is a private hospitals and things like that, and that's recently coming through.
Oh, yeah.
But in generally, if you talk about education, it's free, yeah. And,
nice.
but there's a problem also here. I just recently discovered if it's you give them all education free, even university, once they graduate, then everyone was asking about the government jobs. You will have a lot of people to graduate, and everyone is looking for government to. That's the norm type in Iraq.
Right.
To put them into jobs and things like that. So that's now they are facing this problem.
So
The
there's less
government-
independence because they rely on the government their whole lives, and then as soon as they leave high school, leave university, they're like, "What do I do now? Government, help me!"
Yes, that's what we are seeing now. Problem of many of them. So now there's a sub-views. They are trying to shift that change from university to rely on a government to go to the private sector. So because now, especially in the region I'm talking about, because we have a new foreign companies, they are coming there to invest, and the people there, they're going to something like is going rapidly. People are learning English very fast and other languages and other skills because it's attractions to work with all these international NGOs and the companies in north of Iraq and the south. But yeah, I bring this example because the problem of the education was free, but the consequences it was too many of them will rely on the government. But here is not free, but it's also there's a consequences. You are killing the dream of the students, maybe who they wish to be something because of the financial struggle, they couldn't continue and they change or something like that. Because
I think it's just like if we really want to take the well-being of young people seriously and want to see it improve, we gotta take these things into consideration. There's no mental well-being without without having a comfortable place to stay in or like being financially like stable. So it's like how much are we trying to go above and beyond to really trying to like tackle this issue? Like if you're talking about like SteadyLink not having the enough resources to give these things, then shouldn't we go to SteadyLink and try to find ways so they can have these resources or have access to these resources rather than limiting the amount of students that can get these like financial helps?
Yeah, but that's a funding issue, and then that funding comes from budgets at the beginning of the year that we were just talking about.
Then that's like a problem that we need to tackle. Not like it's really wrong try to go about this issue with limiting the amount of students that can access these like financial like helps rather than actually going to the real problem, which is a funding issue, and trying to go about it in a way where what can we do to actually improve this like funding problem so that like students can have better like access to like financial like help.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. Sometimes the issue as well is not enough people. So if there's not enough social workers and there's not enough people that want a career in social work that will give them a maximum of like $45,000 a year, which is understandable, then how are we going to do that? There is a process to automate a lot of the systems as technology and the years go by. There will be more automation going on, and so for some of the easier to process applications, it can be automated. But for some of more of those grey areas, maybe there can be some policy change or like policy change for those grey areas. And as we were talking about earlier, if we can make the grey area bigger and have more people assigned to those grey areas, then the obvious black and white ones, if there are such thing as an obvious black and white one, can be automated. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah. The money issue is a difficult one because
I think it's all about just being responsible with where we put our money. You know, like throwing money at like things without actually like thinking about where we're gonna like where it's distributed or like who it's helping in the end.
Yeah, definitely. You're right.
Thanks.
It's really interesting, right?
But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's not something that's gonna be fixed in a year or like in
Definitely
any time soon. But it's something that deserves to be a part of a conversation because students' voices matter, like the youth voice matter, and their problems matter. I think settling to struggle in, in just living under just the poverty line and settling for that lifestyle is not something that's gonna benefit anyone, not just the students, but like everyone. You know, because they're going off, like students are going after graduating uni with debt and just having all this stress, and that's not gonna like create any kind of confidence or any kind of, just all these things that students need to thrive. So it deserves to be a part of a conversation. It's really like it is a serious issue.
It seems as though there's like a massive distinction between the voting community in this country. It seems like there are people who focus more on who value individual freedoms more, and they vote for a certain party. And then included in those individual freedoms is the freedom to, the freedom to challenge oneself to get ahead as one can. And then there's the other type of voting community that focus more on social cohesion and supporting the community to kind of get what the collective wants so we can grow together. And both have valid points, and I think that it seems as though we all take bits and pieces from one or the other, because individual freedom is really important, definitely, but also working for the social community is really important. And when we've got individuals, the voting community, who place their priorities in different levels, and then we've only got two parties that we can choose from to make those decisions.
Yeah, totally. There's a point there. There's two different type of thinkings, like individual and the group thinkings. But I really need to be more support for this type of students' life, not just leave them as individual like that way. What if about that freedom will destroy that student? That freedom will get him to somewhere nowhere because of lack of his. He's trying to struggle his life, and then where is the well-being of the personal individual in this case? Because we are talking about the freedom of individual. We should talk about the freedom of someone having free well-being. I mean, being mental health, being supported. He feel like he's okay in this country. He feel like he's doing great things in his job and his work and his study. But we are talking now about students' struggle, and that's like we mentioned, it will affect him later on too. Because what will happen, it will create a system systematically. Will tell the children's, I was struggling when I was a student, you do the same things.
Like a system that's like benefiting rich people.
That's the thing, and
Yeah.
they will still in the same stage because he graduate, he will try to all his life secure a job, and then he continue that things. He will have a kids, and he teach them to same way of survival things how he done it. It's not he's going to teach him something new or something like that. So here is if we found the right support things for the students to give them more, I think, opportunity, freedom to think and to make his right decisions about spending, about everything like that. But does that, I want to ask a question like, does when you enter university, do they in orient, what they call it, the day, induction day, what they call it, the first day, do they teach you exactly about the finance things, how you can finance your life as a student?
No.
There's a lack
No.
of that. So here.
Yeah, true. So there's that individual freedom. If we were able to figure out how we can finance our situation, which I just got taught for the first time about what KiwiSaver was during my induction week last week. And now I know how to manage myself better. But obviously I'm on a much higher wage than I was when I was a student.
Yeah. So here is like some tips and interesting things to tell you like. And sometimes some of them they are lucky, I mean, by mistakenly they go to YouTube or something, they get that idea, then they start educating themselves. But when we are talking about this, because we are talking something to be fair and equal for everyone. Okay, so that's how we need to push the government, these agencies to do more in this sector, to teach them more about them, tell them the facts, because the teachers or the professors, they know that, but they teach them something else. But why not teach them to be financially secure? Because that will help them, once they manage that side of the financing, then he will have a more space to think about his family, thinks about his study, be more creative in his study, what he's doing, what she's doing. So, yeah, I think this is real gap. Because let me tell you, as the experience of someone who is working in a city, I count every day how much I spend on the parking and the public transportations. It's affecting me somehow. I will not go into deep dive, don't worry. But if I calculate it, it's everything about calculation somehow. So when I'm calculating the day, I'm saying myself, like, I'm getting tired. I'm spending 8 to 10 hours walking because I drive from Pururua to city and going back on that traffic and things like that, 40 minutes sometimes in the morning. So I'm calculating all these things. Then I see myself, I'm not happy. I'm losing my passion. I love my job. I love what I do, helping people, things like that. But when I'm getting home, I'm saying I don't have a time for myself. So here is then when I get back to the financial things, okay, how much I'm getting, okay, how much I'm putting on this side, and then, why this is expensive, why these things. And otherwise, then now it's making me to think about other ways. Which, let's say I'm okay, I'm good, I'm thinking about investment ways, but I'm asking these questions or putting this experience for those people who cannot access or think about investment ways or things like that. What will be their situation? It will be very hard for them. Maybe I know now my ways how to survive, but if someone else, what they will do in the middle of the way, then they will stop and give up. And then the community will blame them. You're not worthless.
I think when we're living in a country where we're meant to be, okay in a lot of senses. Like, we're meant to have food on our table. We're meant to do it, do things where we don't have to worry about, like, what we're going to eat at the end of the day or where we're going to sleep. It's kind of crazy how many people, like how much of the youth have those things in their mind of what they're actually gonna, how they're gonna provide for themselves and how they're gonna do, like, all these basic things that we just should have as living in New Zealand, because everyone looks at our country like we have all these basic things, and the fact that we settle for these struggles and we settle for these things is crazy. And I don't think we should be looking at ourselves as a country as like thriving or doing well because a huge amount of the population of the students are not getting the basic things that they need. So that in itself is a big issue. It's in itself, and I feel like it should be something that should be like taken seriously, because no one should ever settle for that kind of lifestyle when they don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the students aren't even just like relying on their student allowance or what the study link is supporting them with. I hear about students who are obviously like studying full time but also having to work. And even through working, they're still not making it through the week, you know, comfortably. They're still worried about their rent and still worried about their shopping and still worried about their student debt and all of that piling up on them. So it just comes down, it's just a real problem that this country has to deal with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one more thing, I will just address it. So I work in a type of organization. We help former refugees into employment skills people. Some of them were students who have been working through a lot of experience as a customer service and things like that, but they are studying something else. And when they are coming to graduate, there is another problem is facing them, which is not getting the right job or the right thing that they were planning to study, or their dream job. So you see, here's is all these problems. I think it's all belong to one sections, the well-being of the students. When you don't take care of them when they are students, their productivity will be also.
Yeah, because like you focus on like you do all these like 9 to 5 jobs, you know, working full time, you know, in like places like hospitality where it's really draining, and also going to uni in hopes that like this will be just like, you know, it's just a stepping stone that like one day you actually graduate and get a proper job, and then you don't get a proper job. So like you lived all your life just living this kind of lifestyle where you are like basically miserable, and it's affecting your well-being, only to end up not like, you know, like no light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, no light at the end of the tunnel, basically. So like, are we really living a you know, like stable life, you know, mentally, like physically, and like just like in every way? So, you know, because like you waste all this big portion of your life just like, you know, working away and then doing all these things, like only to not like really succeed in the end. So
like doing all the conventional things you were taught to do, but still not getting what it is that you dreamed of.
So like these issues are like this problematic. They're really big issues. So
I like what you said. We are not living in okay life, right?
Yeah.
It's not really okay. There is a series of issues we need to talk about. Michael, any thoughts? We have just 1 minute. One of you.
Yeah, like definitely what everyone's been saying is true. New Zealand needs to step up its game in a lot of key areas. Our brand is that we're a really efficient and effective nation, but once you look under the mask, there is a lot of issues going on. Wellbeing's a really good strategy, although it's kind of a prototype for the world that New Zealand's kind of fronting up, and I think that's really admirable. When thinking about well-being, we're thinking about like a way to define well-being is like the reduction of stress. You know, when you think of financial stress, physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, all that stuff affects your well-being. And if we reduce that, essentially, if there's none of that unhealthy stress, then that's where happiness comes from, ideally. And I think that's what the government is trying to like do with measurements of happiness. So yeah, everything what you guys are saying is true. Students really do matter, and they are the future of this country.
Yeah, that's great. And we are coming to end of this episode today. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for your listening. And everyone who you are listening, follow our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. And if you are on LinkedIn and you want to support us, do that too. Thank you so much, and see you next week. Bye.
See you later.
انت تاني مش
Thank you for listening to Voice of Aroha. This program is sponsored by Host International New Zealand.